I was first introduced to Shinto when I was 29, and I attended actually my first General Assembly of Unitarian Universalist congregations. There were priests, you see, from the Grand Tsubaki Shrine that presented ceremony. They presented it, the ritual, in one of those neon pulsing white boxes of a convention center, using chipped plastic tables as their shrine. And yet, still, something within me resonated. So to be in Japan, to have a chance to actually see the places where these happen, where the gates separate the sacred from the mundane, was amazing to me. And I got up early to see the gates and to go to Fushima Inari with its 1,000 gates, just as the food vendors were setting up. It was powerful. And I woke up early several mornings just to visit one in the neighborhood. Now I know that many people in this world associate Shinto with state Shinto and the Japanese aggressions of World War II, and those need to be accounted for. And yet, like many religions that can be claimed by the state, Shinto was an indigenous religion of Japan, predating Buddhism and Taoism, with which it has now been merged in the Japanese context, as Mark said. So to walk through one of these gates, to walk onto the campus of a shrine, was unreal. You see, a torii gate is that dividing line between the mundane and the sacred. And when you enter, you bow and you walk to the side to leave room for the gods to walk through. And purification is also one of the ritual observances. Water is poured from bamboo spouts to allow you to wash first your left hand by pouring a dipper full of water there, and then your right hand by moving the dipper full. And then you use your left again to rinse out your mouth, and you wash your left hand again. And then you take whatever is left in the dipper and you let it run down the spout to clean the dipper itself. So much in this world has made me feel unpure. So I was eager to engage in these timeless rituals, just as one bows twice and then rings a bell and claps twice to get the attention of the gods for your prayer, which when offered is closed with another bow. There was so much to pray for. Every time there was an opportunity to pray, there was something I wanted to pray for. I spent a great deal of my change, and actually a good deal of Mark Watanabe's change, in the various offering boxes. I prayed for the safety of beloved people, for our neighbors who happen to be immigrants, for the children, for the Jiso, the Buddhist protector spirits looked after. I prayed for our nation. And I purchased omamari, the amulets, for this reason as well. What is your deep prayer today? What would you pray for? Now, I get this question a lot. Takahashi, what is that, Polish? This is a question I've received my entire life, often accompanied by someone changing the last H in my name to a K. Nope. And then whenever I explain, the next question is always, do you speak Japanese? And I've often wondered how many people of Polish descent get asked if they speak the language. But the answer is also no. However, when we got a new president in January, I vowed to be in the best physical, mental, and spiritual shape I could possibly be in, because I knew I would need it. So when the opportunity came up just a few months later to sign up for this trip that I've been wanting to take for a very long time, I went ahead and signed up. You know, that means knowing who I am and where I come from, what resources travel with me, and as someone who's of mixed race, I was very clear that Japan was not going to recognize and embrace me, and yet at some level, as I stepped out of the airport, I felt like I was in a place that I had known for my entire life. I also recognized with acuteness this time the homophobia, the transphobia, the other things about the culture, the xenophobia. Yet, embracing who we are is important with all its faults. And honoring that biracial part of me, which others tried to repress, is probably as important as acknowledging the queer parts of me that others tried to repress from the earliest days that I was a teenager as well. So from this trip, I felt a better understanding of culture and food that have always seemed familiar and strange at the same time. And I would ask you, each of you, to think, what part of your identity is a strength for these times for you? Now, as part of this, we walked, as Mark said, the Kamano Kodo, which is an ancient spiritual trail for those seeking rejuvenation and purification. And the route is centered around 3 grand and 2 other major Tashi shrines, one being the tallest single drop waterfall in Japan, which is itself considered a kami, or a god. Now, the trail is not for the faint of heart. It's steep, it's peppered with rocks and roots, it goes up and down. Now, those words from our amazing guide, Jennifer, I got to really fear. She would say, when we were already exhausted, "Oh, we're going to do a little more up and down." And then she would sprint ahead, and I knew we were in big trouble. I learned to breathe with the swing of my walking poles, which I particularly treasured because they were given to me by someone in this congregation when they no longer had a use for them, and they belonged once to Tom Wills. And so through the arduous physical labor came spiritual release. Some moments were so restful. On that demanding first day, so when some of the group was behind me and some was in front of me, and I was alone on a narrow, mercifully flat ridge, the quiet of the trees called out to me, and it was its own dialogue. The tree spirit spoke, and I felt that deep inner peace for which I had yearned. I was at one with the others who journeyed for thousands of years seeking renewal from their lives, which were also in their times hard, no doubt. And we spent some time in the process of forest bathing, literally lying on logs, looking up at the trees. And we spent time among the Oji, the smaller subsidiary shrines, where I said silent prayers and gave more of Mark's money. One of the last we visited on that first really hard day stuck with me in its story that a monk on pilgrimage in the winter lost his way and actually ended up dying just a few feet away from food and shelter. And in those times, I said a prayer that we can all hold on. Who are you praying for in these days? This walk unfurled a better understanding of how practices rooted in the natural world can help sustain us at a time of human excess and destructiveness, a deeper understanding of the need for all of us to know our sacred places and to visit them regularly grew out of that stepping over rock after rock after rock and root after root after root. In Shinto, one seeks a balance between the human world and the natural world, but there is always an appreciation of the power of human community, even contemporary community, as this compatible band of travelers travel together. For in Shinto and in Japanese culture, the power's in the group, not the individual, for better or for worse. There's some definite downsides of that. It's a balm for the hyper-individualization that is such a part of this culture, and a hardship for anyone that would be different. On the day we were to fly out, my travel companion and I made a short, though powerful visit to the oldest Buddhist temple in Osaka. In Japan, Shinto and Buddhism have syncretized or melded, and the temples have torii gates, and the Buddhist figures of Kannon and Jizo are incorporated into the Shinto practices. And in a building across from the main shrine, a priest was ceremonially reading the names of the offerings and offering ritual and prayer. And as his voice in the bowl chimed, I walked around, looking at the walls where the life of the Buddha was shown and portrayed. He was a young boy, and then in his final veneration, though it was the middle scene that struck me, he was standing very thin because it is the time when he has renounced all worldly possessions. He's holding only his wooden beggar's bowl, and the others are keeping him at a distance. But what struck me was just right behind him in the corner of the frame, there were the faces of two very compassionate deer. They were watching him with a gentle, attentive grasp. And all of this tied back to the natural world, I realized. I made 2 circuits of the paintings, noticing those who were hailing or shunning him. And when I came back around, the priest began the offering ceremony again. And I stood looking up at the representation before me, bowing and praying. And there was no need to clap because the images are there, unlike in a Shinto shrine. I prayed until tears ran down my face. So much I would ask for requires resources beyond my control. The priest's voice, the sounds of his ritual knocking on wood or reading the prayers, the way he moved through the familiar movements of the rituals, the way we move through the ritual of dropping these stones filled my heart. For ritual is a reminder that we live adjacent to the divine. Enlightenment is fleeting, the message came to me as I was standing there with the smell of incense, the sound of chanting, the sight of the Buddha, and the feeling of solidity beneath me. We don't just turn a corner and become enlightened so we can be rejuvenated. We have to always be in process. The bridges at the shrines are curved, representing that when we are crossing into a new place, we can only see so far. And we are crossing, my friends. We are crossing. In the closing circle the night before our group dispersed, one in the group led us in singing the call and response that we sang today. Courage, my friends, you do not walk alone. We will walk with you and sing your spirit home. This is one of the songs we sing to those arriving at the Concord Immigration Court on Tuesday mornings. And on Tuesday morning this week, I was back at that place of faithful witness. In this world, the boundary between the sacred and the mundane is increasingly blurred, but we can't forget it or look away. We can't forget to not look up. There's one last story that I want to tell. And I appreciate those of you who followed my blog as I was traveling, and it's still there if anyone wants more detail than I've given today. It's about this piece in the Kyoto Museum dedicated to ceramics. We saw this vase, which was once given by a poet to a member of the court hundreds of years ago, and which was shattered in the 1990s when it was accidentally dropped. They said it was shattered into millions of pieces, the way sometimes it feels like everything around us is being shattered, and yet they had the wisdom to put it back together. This is it after it was restored. What is it, my friends, that we will hold on to each piece of it until it is restored? Waka is a form of poem once popular as a Japanese court practice, and so I close with this. Through a gate, a mountain, nature challenging human. Beyond the gates, world, mundane and ever thrashing, will balance be found again.